Shalom Aleichem. Welcome to Breslov web seminar. This week is Parshat Matos. It's during the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks started on Sunday, and we're now in the period of mourning. And Parshat Matos always comes out in the 3 weeks, always. As does next week's Parshat Masai, and as does next week's Parsha after that, which is Devarim. Devarim was always Shabbos Chazon, the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, or the Shabbos when Tisha B'Av falls on. Matos Masai sometimes are together, sometimes they're separated. This year it's separate. And when they're together, so Pinchas, which we read last week, comes into the fold, and he becomes the fella who, the Parsha, which fits into the 3 weeks too. An introduction to the concept of the 3 weeks with Pinchas, Matos Masai, Devarim, whatnot. Reb Nosson points out that these are 3 weeks of mourning because of the exile, because of the destruction of the temple, because of all the problems that befell the Jewish nation over the years, because we are not in our land able to protect ourselves and whatnot. And what is that? It's weeks of destruction. So Reb Nosson says, but you have to read the Parsha. Pinchas, believe it or not, has a passage where it talks about what it means to hand over the inheritance of the land to the next generation. Matos, this week's Parsha, speaks about the tribes of Reuven and Gad and half of Manasseh, how they conquered a certain area, territory, on the east bank of the Jordan River, and that became the land of Israel. The week of Masai talks about the borders of the land of Israel. And Devarim speaks about Moshe telling Yehoshua, strengthen yourself because you're going to lead the people into the land. What Reb Nosson is telling us is that specifically in these few weeks where we're mourning the destruction of the temple and the exile, we also happen to read the Parshios that speak about returning to the land, about the greatness of the land, about the importance of Eretz Yisrael. So let's delve a little bit into the land of Israel, or perhaps maybe we should start off the Parsha with a vow, right? The Parsha starts off with taking vows, oaths, right? And when we say something, we should keep our word, right? That's always, even if you're not taking an oath. Certainly when you take an oath, you must make sure to keep your word. And then the Torah tells us that Eliezer, the son of Aaron, should take a group of Pinchas, the son of Eliezer, Pinchas, the son of Eliezer, should take a group of people, soldiers, 1,000 from each tribe, and they should battle against the Midianites who caused them to sin, as we discussed last week, and they should kill Bilam. Bilam was the wicked person that tried to curse the Jews, to do all these sins and whatnot. Then Elazar went and he taught the people certain laws about purity, laws of purity of the vessels that we work with. And why is all this necessary? Oaths, battle with Midianites. Why is it necessary to purify the vessels that we have? All this is before we take off tithes and charity in order to inherit the land. The point is, when a person has to do something, I swear I'm going to do it. Right? Did you ever say that? I swear it's right. I swear. All right? People let loose with words. They're not careful with the words that they use. And 90% of the time, when a person has a downfall, it's not because of something they did, because something you did wrong, you could rectify, usually. But if you say something wrong, that's very hard to withdraw, very hard to recall, right? General Motors can make a car that can be recalled, but your words that hurt others cannot, right? What the Torah is telling us is that when you want to go rough and say something specific, something very difficult, you want to take an oath. You want to swear that you're going to do it. In other words, you really sincerely feel you're going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to take off those 10 pounds. I'm going to pay back all the debts that I owe, and so on. When you reach that point, right, mean it. That's the zealousness that we spoke about last week with Pinchas, right? He was zealous, but he did what he had to do. And that's what we have to do too. And you can do it without an oath. If you take an oath, then you better make sure that you do it right. If you're careful with your words, you are actually very careful to feed your words, right? A steady diet of honesty, of integrity, of kind words, of words that are not slanderous or profanity or anything else like that, then you know that you will be ready for the next step to battle the forces of evil, to battle the Midianites, to battle Bilam, to take on somebody who was as impure as Bilam, somebody who was so steeped in impurities that it's impossible for us to even begin to imagine how evil Bilam was. And yet, if we keep our word, if we're careful with our words, then you know you can go into battle and you can be successful too. It's an interesting midrash. Midrash tells us about Achav. Achav was one of the kings of the 10 tribes, and he was extremely wicked. And he served every idolatry possible. He married an evil woman called Jezebel, and she brought in more idolatry into the land of Israel. And terrible situation. And yet, we find in the book of Kings, whenever he went out to battle, he was successful. An idolater, someone so evil, so wicked, and yet he was always successful. And yet in the time of other kings, they went out and they lost people. People died in battle. And the midrash asks why. Here is such an evil person and yet he is successful, and others not. And the midrash answers, because there was peace among the people. They respected each other. So that when we take an oath, or when we say something, and we're sincere with it, at that point, we're able to be successful, even if we have things that are wrong with us, even if it's idolatry, even if it's really terrible sins. But if we keep our word, we try to be honest, we try to be kind, we try to speak gentle words and whatnot, in that case we're always able, God willing, to overcome and be able to be successful. On the other hand, if we're not careful with what we say, so then we always find ourselves falling into the pits. We go out to battle, we don't do right. Which is why it's followed by the story of Elazar, who told the people how to purify their vessels, right? Because you went out to battle, but it doesn't pay to go out to battle when I have all these things wrong with me. I have to learn how to strengthen myself and become as pure as I can, become as good as I can. Let's put it like that. Let's become as good as we really can. In that case, then we can go out like the tribes of Reuven and Gad in the end of the Parsha, where they go out, and half a tribe of Manasseh, where they go and conquer the land, and they absorb the land into Eretz Yisrael. And that way is a proof to us that we too, no matter how difficult our exile is, no matter where we are on planet Earth, we all could turn back to Hashem. Purify our words, we'll purify our vessels. We'll be able to conquer evil, and we'll be able to come back and live in the land of Israel, God willing, speedily in our days. Amen.